Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today we're going to be, well, diving deep into a story. It's got family drama, societal pressures, and, a little divine intervention for good measure.
Always a good time for divine intervention.
Right. So you brought us the story of Abram and Sarai. Specifically, we're looking at Genesis chapter 16.
Yeah.
And I got to say, just skimming it, this one's going to be good.
Oh, it's a doozy. So much to unpack.
Okay, so we're talking ancient history, big promises, some really, really big emotions. Let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
All right, so Genesis 16 drops us right into the thick of things with Abram and Sarai. But before we get to Hagar, what's the big deal here with Sarai not being able to have children? Like, set the scene for us.
Okay, so imagine, right? You're living in this ancient world. Having children, especially a son, it wasn't just about family.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely not.
It was about legacy. It was about inheritance, your lineage, your family's entire future. It all hinged on having an heir.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Huge pressure. And for a woman, being unable to conceive, it brought a lot of shame.
I bet. Society was just so different back then. But it's interesting, makes you think about the kinds of pressures we put on ourselves, even today. Different, but still.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so Sarai can't have kids. Enter this plan of hers, right?
Yeah.
She tells Abram to have a child, but with Hagar, her maidservant. And I'm just going to say it, that's a pretty bold move, even for back then.
It is, although, and this might surprise you, this kind of arrangement, surrogacy, it wasn't unheard of, not in these ancient cultures.
Oh, really? I mean, I guess it makes sense given what you were saying about needing an heir and all that.
Exactly. Shows you how differently they viewed family structures back then, too.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a power dynamic we need to talk about.
For sure. You've got Sarai, Abram, and Hagar, each with completely different levels of, power, let's be honest.
Absolutely. And Hagar, I mean, talk about lack of agency. She's an Egyptian. She's a servant. She's at the very bottom of the societal ladder. She doesn't get a choice.
Oh, no. Not at all.
First, it's Sarai telling her what to do. Then it's Abram.
And I'm guessing this power dynamic gets even more complicated when Hagar actually gets pregnant.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Sarai, who is the one pulling the strings, she's hit with this wave of jealousy, resentment. I mean, this was her plan, but still, she feels slighted.
I mean, that's a pretty human reaction if you ask me, even if it was the expected outcome based on what you were saying about the customs of the time.
You're right. It's totally relatable even thousands of years later.
So where's Abram in all of this? Honestly, he always seems kind of passive in this whole story.
It's true. You're right to point that out. Abram pretty much washes his hands of the whole thing, tells Sarai, you deal with it.
Wow. So again, that power imbalance just gets amplified, right?
Exactly. Abram sides with Sarai, and Hagar is left completely vulnerable, and that's what leads her to flee. Heads out into the wilderness on her own.
And that's where things really, this is a turning point in the story, right?
Absolutely. It's not just about running away. It's about who she encounters. This encounter Hagar has with the angel, that's huge.
Okay, so break it down for us.
Here's Hagar, alone, scared, pregnant. She's running away from this awful situation. You'd think she'd be condemned, right?
Yeah, it would make sense, right? Given the context.
But it's the opposite. She's met with comfort. She gets a promise, and not just any promise, a promise directly from God.
Wow. So God steps in and supports her.
Supports her, protects her. He doesn't tell her to go back and be mistreated. No way. He gives her a message of hope, instructions to return to a situation where, while she will still be a servant, God will be with her.
That's powerful. And this promise is all centered on her son, right? Ishmael.
You got it. The angel even tells her what to name him. Ishmael, which literally means God hears. Powerful, right? It's like God saying, hey, I see you, Hagar. I hear you're suffering.
And he's going to do something about it.
Exactly. But it doesn't end there, though. There's this other part of the prophecy, this prediction about Ishmael's future. It's a bit ominous, like it speaks of struggles, hardship. But again, it emphasizes that God is aware.
It's like setting the stage for everything that's going to come later, right? The conflict between Ishmael and Isaac, all of that.
Exactly. It challenges that whole traditional idea of lineage, of chosenness that we see throughout the Bible. It's bigger than just Abraham. It's about how God interacts with everyone, even those on the margins, like Hagar.
It makes you realize this isn't just some ancient story, right? This is a story about faith, about resilience, about being seen, even when you feel completely alone.
And Hagar gets it. In this moment of despair, she recognizes something profound. She calls God El Roi, the God who sees.
Wow. So powerful. There's something so incredibly powerful, I think, for anyone who's ever felt invisible, to be reminded that someone sees them, sees their pain, sees their struggle.
It really is. It's a story that resonates even today, thousands of years later. I mean, think about it. We're still talking about it.
It's true. This one little chapter, we're hit with all these complex themes, social hierarchy, agency, jealousy, faith. I mean, it really makes you think.
It does. It really does.
It leaves us with so much to unpack, too. Like, how did this encounter actually change Hagar? How did that promise about Ishmael, how did that actually play out in his relationship with his brother Isaac?
So many questions.
Right, so much to think about. I want to thank you for bringing us this story, for taking us on this deep dive. And for everyone listening, keep asking these questions, keep digging deeper, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.